Lena Varick arrived at Forward Station Helios on a cold gray morning when the sun hid behind the metal horizon of the orbital shields. The station felt alive with noise, footsteps, and the constant hum of machines. But Lena walked quietly through the landing bay as if she did not belong to the rush around her. She wore the standard gray uniform of a new recruit, but on her shoulders she carried something heavier than a pack. She carried the hope that this place would finally see what she could do. Even if she did not look like a soldier, the other recruits noticed her the moment she stepped inside the barracks. Some gave her quick glances and then looked away with smirks. Others openly stared. The new batch of soldiers was filled with tall, strong, confident people who looked like they were carved out of the same metal as the station itself. Next to them, Lena seemed small, thin, and too gentle. Her dark hair was tied neatly, her steps soft, and her eyes kept drifting to the data screens in the hallway instead of the officers. Barking orders. When the sergeant introduced her to the unit, the laughter began. "She's the new one? She looks like she can't even lift a rifle," someone whispered loud enough for half the room to hear. Another voice added, "Maybe she's lost. Maybe she belongs in engineering, not here with us." A tall man at the back said, "Careful, don't sneeze near her. She might fly away." Lena heard it all, but she did not react. She simply stood straight, holding her tablet close to her chest, waiting for the sergeant to finish the introductions. Her silence made some recruits laugh even more, thinking she was scared. But she only kept her eyes down, studying the patterns on the floor, letting their words pass by her like harmless wind. Sergeant Halle watched the reactions with a slow frown. Unlike the others, he did not laugh. He had seen many types of soldiers in his years, and he knew better than to judge someone by her size. He noticed the way Lena kept quiet, not because she was timid, but because she was thinking. There was something in her eyes that did not match her small frame. Something sharp. Something always awake. Training began on the first day, and the unit quickly learned how different Lena was. When the others picked rifles and practiced their aim with confidence, Lena held hers like it was heavier than she expected. Her hands were steady, but her movements were slow and careful, as if she wanted to understand every piece of the weapon before she used it. The other recruits joked about how long she took. "Are you building it or shooting it?" one of them shouted. Lena stayed quiet. During hand-to-hand drills, she reacted a second too late, always analyzing instead of striking. Her opponents pushed her to the mat again and again, laughing as she stood back up each time without complaint. She did not get angry. She did not talk back. She simply tried again. And that made them laugh even more, but the most surprising thing happened in the simulation room. The recruits entered the large hollow chamber where virtual enemies appeared in shifting tactical scenarios. Most soldiers charged forward, shooting widely, relying on speed and brute force. Lena hung back, her eyes scanning every movement, every light, every strange shift in the simulation grid. She saw patterns that others did not. She noticed where the enemies moved, how the holographic traps pulsed before activating, how the entire simulation felt like a puzzle instead of a battlefield, and she solved puzzles easily, while the recruits fought in chaotic waves. She moved with slow, careful steps, choosing paths that avoided danger. She pressed the right panels, triggered the right doors, and turned the simulation into a set of predictable moves. But because she was not shooting anyone, the others saw it as failure. When the simulation ended, Lena had survived longer than most of them, but they still laughed. "You hid the whole time," a woman said. "This is war training, not a math test." Another added, "She's scared of everything except her tablet." Lena only wiped the sweat from her forehead and whispered, "I wasn't hiding. I was napping." But no one listened. Sergeant Halle did. He pulled her aside after the session and asked, "You saw something in there, didn't you?" Something the others didn't see. She hesitated, unsure if she should explain. Most people ignored her when she talked about patterns, but Halle waited patiently. Finally, she said softly, "The simulation is built on shifting grids. The enemy units follow probability paths. If you know the numbers, you can move before they do." Halle had never heard a recruit speak like that. He crossed his arms and studied her. And you understood all that in real time? She nodded shyly. Halle gave a small smile. Don't worry about the others. Most soldiers only see what is directly in front of them. You see everything else? That's rare. It was the first kind thing anyone said to her on the station, but it did not stop the laughter from others. Days passed and the jokes grew louder. They called her the ghost, the quiet mouse, and the wrong recruit. Someone even left a broken tablet outside her bunk, saying, "Here's something to play with." Tech girl. She picked it up silently and fixed it within 10 minutes, but no matter how they treated her, Lena never showed anger. She always woke up early, always trained harder than expected, and always kept her eyes scanning everything around her. She felt the station through its numbers, its signals, its data streams. The others saw walls and doors. She saw patterns and systems, and she could feel when something was slightly off. One night, while the unit slept, Lena sat alone in the observation bay, watching the stars beyond the shield. The silence of space comforted her. She pulled up her tablet and began reviewing the recorded signals from nearby sectors. She often studied them the way someone might read a story. Each line of data told her where ships moved, where energy shifted, where things felt wrong. That night, something unusual appeared. A series of faint pulses came from the region known to border Vrax's Dominion space. The pulses were irregular, almost hidden, but not hidden enough for Lena's mind. Her eyes widened. The signature looked like scouting signals, but they were too close, too frequent, and too precise. Someone was preparing for something. Lena zoomed into the signals, matching them to old patterns she had studied before. As she watched the numbers form shapes in her mind, she felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She recognized the rhythm. The Vrax's Dominion always used this type of coded movement when they were about to strike. She rushed to Sergeant Hale's quarters, knocking on the door quietly but urgently. When he opened the door, tired and confused, she held out her tablet and said, "You need to see this." Halle scanned the data, frowning deeper as he understood what she had found. "Are you sure?" he asked. Lena nodded. "Yes, they're getting closer. They're testing our range." Halle let out a slow breath. "I'll take this to command." "You did well noticing it." She felt a small warmth inside her chest when he said that. But she also knew that the commanders rarely listened to warnings from scouts unless they had absolute proof. Her fear came true the next morning. The officers reviewed the data but dismissed her analysis. "It could be a natural signal bounce," they said. "It could be old Vrax echoes. We can't assume it's an attack." Lena tried to explain the pattern, but they interrupted her with polite smiles. "We admire your attention to detail, recruit, but we don't want to cause unnecessary panic." She returned to the training room quietly, feeling the sting of frustration she rarely allowed herself to feel. The recruits noticed her gloomy expression and laughed again. "Did your numbers lie to you today?" One joked. "Maybe you misread your little graphs." But Lena knew she was not wrong. Late that evening, when she sat again in the observation bay, another pulse arrived. Then another. And another. Each one stronger than the last. Her fingers shook as she recorded them. The pattern was now undeniable. The Vrax were coming. An alarm suddenly echoed across the station. Red lights flashed along the walls, and the calm hum of Helios turned into roaring chaos. Soldiers ran through the halls. Officers shouted orders. The station shields rose into full power. A voice crackled through every speaker. "Unidentified fleet approaching. All units prepare for potential engagement." The recruits froze, fear flashing across their faces. Lena watched all of them turn from laughter to panic in a single moment, but something even stranger happened. In the first enemy broadcast that broke through the static, a cold alien voice demanded one thing: "Bring us the human strategist who sees through our shadows." The recruits looked at each other, confused. No one knew who the enemy meant, but Lena's heart pounded. She understood. They were talking about her, and the unit that mocked her now had no idea that the quiet girl in the corner was the only one who knew how to fight what was coming. The silence after the alien message felt heavier than any explosion. Every soldier in the room stood frozen, staring at the speakers as if they expected more. The cold voice of the Vrax commander had echoed through every hall, every bunk, every metal corridor of Forward Station Helios. It repeated in Lena's mind again and again. Bring us the human strategist who sees through our shadows. No one spoke for several seconds. Even the alarms seemed quieter, as if the station itself was shocked. Then slowly, whispers rose around the room. Strategist? Who are they talking about? Someone asked. Another soldier said, We don't have anyone like that here. The recruits looked confused, scared, unsure of what the aliens meant. Lena stood among them, her hands cold, her throat tight. Nobody suspected her. Why would they? She was the quiet one, the small one, the recruit who everyone thought didn't belong. The one who analyzed too much and fought too little. The thought that the enemy knew her mind, even when her own unit didn't, made her chest tighten. Sergeant Halle walked in quickly, pushing through the group. Everyone to your stations! Move! His voice cut through the panic. Soldiers snapped out of their frozen state and rushed toward their assigned posts. Lena stayed still for a moment until Halle caught her eye. Varric, with me. She nodded and followed him. They walked through the corridors, lights flashing red, walls trembling as distant impacts shook the station. Halle kept his voice low so no one else could hear. You were right about the signals. They are attacking. And they knew someone here spotted their movement. We need to understand how. Lena held her tablet close. The pattern I saw, it wasn't hidden well. Maybe they expected someone to see it. Maybe they wanted to know who would understand it. Halle glanced at her with a heavy expression. And now we know who they meant, Lena swallowed. They want me. Halle didn't deny it. Instead, he guided her into the command center. Officers stood around the main table, overwhelmed with reports from every sector. Holoscreens flickered. Enemy symbols lit up across the map of surrounding space, showing the Vrax fleet drawing closer like storm clouds. When Halle stepped forward with Lena behind him, the officers turned. Some frowned. Some seemed annoyed. The commander, a tall man with a stern face, asked, Why did you bring her here? This is a level 1 situation. Recruits are not allowed in the command center. Halle replied firmly, She's the one who detected the enemy pattern before anyone else. And she warned us. The officers exchanged doubtful looks. One said, We don't have time for experiments. We need real strategists, not recruits with lucky guesses. Lena felt her stomach twist. She had expected this reaction. But Halle didn't let it end there. He stepped aside, letting Lena stand alone before the glowing map table. Tell them what you found, he told her. Lena took a breath, her fingers trembling slightly as she tapped her tablet. The map zoomed in on the incoming pulse signals she had studied for nights. She spoke softly but clearly. These signals are not normal movement patterns. The Vrax use this frequency when they prepare to strike. They hide it inside random noise so that normal scanners don't catch it. But the sequence repeats in a cycle. It always repeats. Some officers leaned closer. Others kept their arms crossed. Lena continued. Their fleet is not testing us anymore. They're positioning themselves. They are waiting for a cue. Something big is coming next. Something fast. And the fact that they asked for a strategist means they already know we noticed their pattern. They expect someone on this station to respond. Her voice shook slightly, but she continued. They expect me? Silence filled the room again. Finally, one officer said, This is nonsense. They're using psychological tactics. They want to scare us. This girl is not who they are referring to. Another officer nodded. She is a recruit. And she can't even pass combat drills without falling behind. Lena lowered her eyes. The words hurt more now, in front of all these people, than they ever had in the barracks. She felt small again, but Halle stepped forward. Her analysis is solid. I reviewed it myself. And now the enemy's broadcast matches exactly what she detected. You can question her skill, but not her accuracy. His voice was strong, confident. The commander sighed and rubbed his forehead. Fine, we will review her numbers again. But right now, we need to focus on the incoming attack. The officers returned to their stations. Lena stood still, feeling half visible. Halle placed a hand on her shoulder. Don't let them shake you. They are scared. They just don't want to show it. Lena nodded and followed him out. The station shook again as another distant impact struck the outer shields. Soldiers shouted orders, ran across the halls, and moved equipment. Lena found herself near one of the large viewing windows where the darkness of space flashed with bright streaks of enemy pulses. The Vrak ships were closing in as she watched. A strange feeling spread through her chest. Part fear, part curiosity. The data she had studied was now becoming real in front of her. She knew the movement of the enemy ships before they even appeared on the screen. Every shift, every formation change, felt like numbers she had already solved. Her mind matched the patterns automatically. It felt like her thoughts were racing ahead of reality. Then something unexpected happened. A second broadcast broke through. The same cold, alien voice filled the station once more. Human station, your shields will fall. Surrender and give us the one who understands us. Give us the one whose mind reads our silence. Lena felt her chest grow tight again. The soldiers around her whispered urgently. Why do they want this strategist so badly? Who is it? Is it someone high-ranking? The panic grew. Some soldiers looked terrified. Others were angry, but none of them pointed at her. None of them even thought she could be the one. She felt invisible again. But this time it brought no comfort. Halle returned to her side. They are pushing fear tactics. They want us divided. But we are not giving them anyone, you understand? Lena nodded slowly. Yes, Sergeant. He studied her face. You're scared. She took a slow breath. Not scared. Just trying to understand why they know my mind. Halle crossed his arms. Maybe they don't. Maybe they only sense someone was reading their patterns. They don't know who it is. They're guessing. Lena looked up at him. But what if they're not guessing? What if they really saw my work somehow? Halle didn't have an answer. Hours passed. The Vrak's fleet settled into position. The outer defense lines reported increasing pressure. Shields were holding, but cracks were forming. Teams were being sent to repair broken circuits, stabilize power lines, and prepare for boarding attempts. Lena followed Halle to the lower levels where the sensor arrays were monitored. She watched the numbers roll across the screens. The enemy ships were shifting again. Same pattern. Same rhythm. She recognized the movement immediately. They're tightening their formation, she whispered. They're preparing a focused strike, not a wide attack. Something sharp. Straight toward the central shield. The officer beside her frowned. How do you know that? She pointed at the signals. They always do this before a precision hit. Their ships align by pulse. You can't see it on normal scanners, but the pattern is there. The officer stared at her tablet, then back at the main screen, then called the commander on the comm. Sir, the recruit predicted a formation shift that just confirmed. She may be right. Lena felt her heart speed up. For the first time, someone other than Halle believed her. The attack came seconds later. The Vraks fired a concentrated energy blast. It struck the central shield with a sound like a thunderclap tearing through metal. Helios shook violently. Lights flickered. Sirens screamed. Soldiers stumbled and grabbed walls for balance. Shields down 10%. Someone shouted. Another officer yelled. Damage on decks 4 and 7. Lena looked at the signals again. They're not finished. The next hit will come from the left. They always rotate after a precision shot. Halle turned to her. How long until the next one? She scanned the pulse rhythm. 8 seconds? Maybe 9. Halle grabbed the comm unit. Rotate shield energy to the left side. Now. Officers hesitated for a moment, then obeyed. Energy redirected just in time. The second blast hit exactly where she predicted. This time the station stayed standing. Everyone in the room stared at her. The doubt in their eyes began to fade. Something else took its place. Fear, respect, curiosity. Lena felt none of that. She only felt the numbers moving faster and faster in her mind. She understood the enemy too well. Too easily. And the Vraks knew it. A third broadcast cut through the air. Human strategist. We see your moves. We feel your thoughts. You cannot hide from us. Lena's hands shook. Halle stepped closer, protecting her. Don't listen to them. She wanted to believe him. But deep down, she felt something strange. A connection, a pull. Like the Vraks were speaking directly to her, the room erupted in chaos again as the enemy ships changed formation, launching new waves of attacks. Officers rushed to respond. Halle guided Lena to a safer corner. "We need you to keep reading the signals. But stay behind me. Understood?" Lena nodded. "Yes, Sergeant." She sat down and placed her tablet on her lap, breathing slowly, focusing on the patterns. The Vrak's fleet grew closer. The shields weakened. The command center shook with every impact. And through it all, one thought echoed in Lena's mind. They know me, not my face. Not my voice, but my mind, and the battle had only just begun. The attacks came harder with every passing minute. Each blast shook forward station Helios like a metal drum struck by a giant hand. The hallways rattled, the lights flickered. The soldiers scrambled to reinforce positions as alarms echoed across every level. The Vrak's Dominion was no longer testing the station. They were beginning a full assault. Lena ran beside Sergeant Halle as they moved through the command deck. Officers shouted orders into units, screens flashed red warnings, and smoke drifted from a corner where a console had exploded earlier. The air smelled burnt, sharp, and heavy with tension. Lena tried to stay calm. Her mind worked fast, almost too fast, as she studied the new signals appearing on her tablet. The fifth. Vrak ships were shifting formation again. It was a formation she had seen only once before, in old records of a destroyed human station. The memory sent a chill down her spine. "They're getting ready to board," Lena whispered. Halle stopped mid-step. "Are you sure?" She nodded, pointing at the sharp spikes in the signal pattern. "This is what they do when they bring boarding pods. They hit the shields again and again to force a weak point, then strike directly into it." Halle didn't question her. He turned to the nearest officer. "We need to prepare internal defense teams. Right now." But the officer hesitated. "We need confirmation. We can't move teams without..." Before he finished, the station shook violently as another blast struck the same spot twice in a row. Sparks flew from the ceiling. The sound was so loud that Lena covered her ears. The officer paled. "Understood? I'll send the teams." Lena and Halle ran toward the lower decks with a squad of soldiers following behind. The hallways were filled with movement engineers rushing to repair circuits, medics carrying stretchers, soldiers grabbing weapons from open lockers. The squad leader looked at Halle. "Why are we moving to the lower levels?" Halle nodded toward Lena. "Because she said that's where they'll try to break through." Some soldiers exchanged uncertain looks. One whispered, "We're trusting her now?" Another said, "She's just a recruit." But before they could finish, Lena spoke softly. "You don't have to trust me. Trust the numbers." She held up her tablet, showing the rapidly rising heat signatures. "They're coming within minutes." Halle gave her a quick look of approval. "You heard her move." The squad pushed forward. When they reached the long lower corridor, the lights flickered again. Lena felt her heartbeat quicken. The air felt tense, like everything was waiting for something terrible. Then the sound came, a deep, metallic thud. Then another dot and another. The soldiers tensed, raising their rifles. Halle stepped ahead of them. "Pods," he said. "Get ready." Lena pressed herself against the wall, watching the signal spike. The Vrak's pods slammed into the hull, and with a loud hiss, sharp metal claws dug through the station's plating. Sparks burst as the enemy forced a hole open. A blast of smoke filled the corridor. Then the Vrak soldiers stepped through. They were tall, armored, and moved with sharp mechanical precision. Their armor glowed faintly with red lines, and their multi-eyed helmets scanned the room instantly. Without hesitation, they opened fire. The first exchange of shots echoed through the metal corridor. Human soldiers fired back, taking cover behind crates and support beams. Halle shouted commands, his voice strong even through the chaos. "Hold them back! Don't let them spread." Lena stayed low, trying to focus on the data streaming across her tablet. She could see more pods incoming. More life signatures. More danger. Her heart pounded as she crawled behind a support column. A blast hit the wall inches from her head. She flinched, gripping her tablet tightly. She wasn't a fighter, she knew that. She wasn't built for this kind of chaos. The noise, the smoke, the screams, it overwhelmed her, but the numbers were still clear. She saw the patterns even through her fear. She stepped out from behind the column for a moment, shouting, "Left side! They're circling to flank us!" Halle responded instantly, waving 2 soldiers toward the left corridor. They took position just in time as a second wave of Vraks emerged from the side passage. The soldiers fired, stopping the flank. Halle glanced back at Lena with a look of amazement. "Keep calling it out." Lena ducked again as another blast tore through the air. She watched as the enemy formation shifted subtly. She recognized it. The Vraks had a pattern for everything. "They're moving to break our center." She called again. Halle shouted, "Close the center gap. Push forward." The human soldiers followed, and the corridor echoed with loud, chaotic gunfire. The Vraks advanced with terrifying precision, but this time, the humans responded just as fast thanks to Lena's predictions. The battle felt endless. The smoke grew thicker, the air filled with the smell of burning wires and hot metal. But slowly, inch by inch, the humans pushed the Vraks back toward the breach. Finally, after a final exchange of shots, Halle shouted, "Seal the breach!" Engineers rushed forward with emergency metal plates, and sparks flew as they welded the opening shut. The Vrak soldiers, still inside the station, collapsed once their link to the main force was cut. The corridor fell silent except for the heavy breathing of exhausted soldiers. Halle turned to Lena. "You saved us." Lena shook her head. "The numbers did. I only read them." But Halle put a hand on her shoulder. "No, you saw what no one else could." Some of the soldiers stared at her with new eyes, not with mockery, but with disbelief and respect. But there was no time to rest. A sudden, sharp alarm echoed across the station again. A red light flashed above them. An officer's voice crackled through the comm system. "All units report. The Vraks are shifting to a new attack pattern. Multiple boarding pods detected. They are targeting the mid-levels and the command deck." Halle looked at Lena. "Can you read it?" She nodded and brought up her tablet again. Her eyes scanned quickly. Her fingers shook slightly from exhaustion, but the patterns filled her mind clearly. Her eyes widened. "They're trying to overwhelm us. Boarding from 3 sides. Then forcing us into the center. They want control of the command deck." She looked up at Halle. "They won't stop until they get what they want." "And they think what they want is you," Halle said quietly. Lena felt a cold shiver move through her. "They shouldn't know me. I'm nobody." Halle shook his head. "That's where you're wrong." Before she could answer, another blast shook the floor under their feet. Soldiers steadied themselves as the lights flickered again. "We need to get to the command deck," Halle said. "They'll hit it hard. And we need your eyes there. Let's move." The soldiers regrouped and sprinted through the corridors, stepping over debris and past damaged walls. Lena ran beside Halle, her breath heavy, her mind racing even faster. All around them, chaos echoed. Distant gunfire, explosions, the screams of orders from officers trying to hold their positions. Helios Station felt like it was tearing apart, but Lena forced herself to stay focused. When they reached the command deck, the tension was even heavier. Officers gathered around the main table, shouting updates. Screens showed multiple breaches happening at once. The map blinked with red symbols, enemy units. "Too many." The commander saw Halle and Lena enter. "What is she doing here?" he demanded. "This is a high-level operation," Halle cut him off. "She predicted every move so far. We need her here." Lena stepped forward cautiously. The commander glared at her, but something in his eyes showed fear, not of her, but of the situation. He finally sighed. "Fine, what do you see?" Lena looked at the map. She saw the enemy patterns instantly. The Vraks were moving like a storm around the station, closing in, tightening pressure, creating traps for the humans. "They're going to break through the command deck corridor in less than 2 minutes, she said. "We need to redirect defenses here and here." She pointed at 2 side passages. The officers followed the path. on the screen and realized she was right. Orders were sent instantly, outside the command deck. Heavy weapons were positioned. Soldiers ran into the side hallways. Metal shields were activated. The Vrax attack smashed into the corridor almost exactly at the moment Lena predicted. The sound was deafening. Soldiers shouted as the enemy stormed forward. Lena watched the map with wide eyes. She could feel the pressure of the battle building. She could see where the humans were weakest. They're pushing too hard on the left. She called. Halle relayed the order. Soldiers shifted. A minute later she shouted, "Right side collapse. Reinforce." The deck shook again. Another blast. Another wave of Vrax soldiers. The enemy wanted one thing. Her. And they would destroy everything to get her. The commander stared at her in disbelief as she continued to guide the defense. Officers glanced at her with startled respect. Even the soldiers outside shouted updates and requests for her predictions. She was no longer the quiet recruit in the corner. She was the mind holding the station together. But then, the entire station suddenly trembled with a massive impact that knocked Lena off her feet. Halle grabbed her arm to steady her. "What was that?" he shouted. Lena looked at her tablet. Her eyes widened with terror. They changed formation. Halle frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means they're done testing us." Her voice trembled. "The next attack is everything they have. They want to break us in one strike." Halle swallowed hard. "Can we stop it?" Lena stared at the flashing red symbols approaching the command deck. "I don't know," she whispered. The Vrax were coming, and this time they were coming directly for her. Lena moved through the damaged hallway with her tablet clutched close to her chest. Smoke drifted from broken pipes, and the floor shook as another Vrax blast struck the outer wall of the station. She tried to ignore the fear climbing up her throat. She had no time for fear now. The enemy was pushing harder with every passing minute, and they were not attacking randomly anymore. They were coming for her. The unit followed her closely, their boots pounding behind her as they moved toward the lower command deck. Soldiers who once laughed at her, who once thought she was only a quiet tech recruit with no place in the battlefield, now looked to her as if she carried the only map to survival. None of them said it out loud, but she could feel it. Their trust had shifted. Sergeant Halle walked beside her, leaning slightly on his rifle. He still tried to hide his pain, but she had seen the burn mark on his side. He refused treatment to stay at her side. She knew he did not need to say anything. He trusted her more than anyone else in the unit. Lena did not understand how she became the one leading the fight, but she accepted the role because the others needed her. She guided them through another corridor, watching the flickering lights. The emergency power grid was failing in some sections. If the lights went out completely, the Vrax could use the dark to push their assault even harder. She opened her tablet, checking the internal map. Her fingers moved across the screen quickly as she zoomed in on the positions of the Vrax boarding pods. They had already deployed 3 new teams. They were moving toward them fast. "They are trying to cut us off here," she said softly. Halle nodded. "Then we move before they reach it." The unit followed Lena's lead as she turned into another hallway. She could hear distant explosions and shouting from soldiers fighting on other decks. The Vrax had spread throughout the station, their armored boots echoing in the metal corridors. They fought with cold precision, not wasting a single movement. As they reached a junction, Lena stopped. She stared at the map again. The Vrax teams were dividing into 2 groups. One was moving toward the reactor, while the other was closing in on their path. "They want to shut down the station's core," she whispered. Halle frowned. "If they do that, Helios will go dark." Lena nodded. Without the core, their defensive grid would collapse. Every human soldier on the station would be blind. The Vrax would sweep through the remaining corridors with no resistance. "We need to stop both groups," she said. "That's impossible," one soldier muttered. "We don't have the numbers." Lena looked at him with calm eyes. "We do if we make them choose the wrong path." She began tapping quickly on her tablet, rerouting internal energy flows and opening certain blast doors. At the same time, she sealed others. The station systems were struggling, but she managed to control some of them. Her plan was simple: force the Vrax to walk down specific corridors. Once they committed to a path, she would trap them or slow them long enough for the human soldiers to intercept them. She turned to the unit. We split into 2 teams. One will follow me to stop the group heading for the core. The other will prepare an ambush for the second team of Vrax. The soldiers exchanged worried looks, but Halle spoke first. We trust her. We follow the plan. The tension eased slightly, and the soldiers prepared themselves. Lena led her team through another corridor. Alarms echoed in the distance, flashing red through the smoke. The air smelled like burned metal. She kept her focus on the map, watching the Vrax movement. They were closing in fast. They turned a corner and came face to face with a group of Vrax scouts. The aliens reacted instantly, raising their weapons. Human soldiers dove behind broken crates while Lena stayed low, clutching her tablet. "Return fire!" Halle shouted. Gunfire exploded through the hallway. Bright flashes lit the walls as human rounds collided with alien armor. The Vrax moved with discipline, advancing slowly. Lena watched their formation. Something was off. They seemed to be pushing harder in the middle. "They want to break our line in the center," she whispered. She tapped her tablet again and rerouted a damaged power cable. A spark burst from the ceiling above the Vrax. Smoke exploded downward, confusing the aliens for a moment. The humans took advantage and fired at their exposed sides. 2 Vrax fell instantly. The rest of the enemy team pulled back slightly, reorganizing. Halle signaled the humans to advance. They pushed forward, forcing the Vrax around the corner. When the shooting stopped, Lena checked the map again. The Vrax scouts had been only the front line. The real threat was still approaching the core. "We have to move," she said. They continued down another corridor until they reached a large blast door. Lena quickly entered a code on her tablet. The door opened halfway before stopping with a loud metallic screech. "The system is failing," she said quietly. "We squeeze through." Halle replied. They pushed through the partially open blast door and entered a wider hallway that led directly to the core access chamber. The Vrax team was already ahead of them. Lena's heart raced. She needed a plan fast. "They are deploying charges on the core door," she said. Halle looked at the soldiers. "We stopped them here." The humans spread out. Lena took a position behind a large metal support beam. She checked her tablet. The Vrax team was large. Too large. And they were well armed. The fight began with a sudden explosion of noise. Human soldiers opened fire. The Vrax responded instantly, returning heavy plasma fire. The walls shook as bolts of energy hit them. The humans were outnumbered. Lena saw an opening in the Vrax line. They were using a portable shield generator on the right side of the hallway. "If that shield stays active, they will reach the core," she whispered. She crawled along the ground while plasma bolts shot past her. She reached a loose power cable near the wall. She tapped it with her tablet, sending a surge through the metal. The cable sparked violently. The spark raced along the wall and struck the portable shield's power node. A small explosion followed, knocking the shield generator offline. "Push now," Halle shouted. The humans advanced, firing with renewed force. Without the shield, the Vrax line weakened. The aliens attempted to regroup, but it was too late. The humans broke through, taking down the last of them. Breathing heavily, Lena checked the map again. The second Vrax team was moving straight into the ambush she had prepared earlier. But suddenly, a new icon appeared on the screen, a larger Vrax signal, a strike leader. Her blood went cold. "They sent their elite unit," she whispered. "They are coming here." Halle looked at her. "They want you." Lena swallowed hard. She knew he was right. The Vrax commander had already spoken her name across the station. They feared her ability to predict their tactics. This elite team was meant to capture her alive. The unit prepared for another fight. Soldiers checked their weapons with shaking hands. They were exhausted, bruised, and covered in smoke and dust. But they stood together. Lena held her tablet tightly as the heavy footsteps of the Vrax elite approached. The ground vibrated under the weight of their armor. She took a deep breath and whispered, "We end this here." The hallway filled with shadows as the Vrax elite turned the corner, moving with cold precision. Their armor was darker than the others, marked with glowing symbols. They looked directly at Lena. Her heart pounded. But she stood firm. Halle stepped in front of her. "You're not taking her." The Vrax leader raised his weapon slowly. Lena exhaled once, steady and calm. She had been mocked, ignored, underestimated. But now the enemy feared her name, and she was ready to show them why. The hallway fell silent for a moment as the Vrax elite team stepped forward. Their heavy armor glowed faintly with sharp symbols that pulsed like a heartbeat. Smoke drifted behind them, and the floor vibrated with every step they took. Lena stood near the center of the human formation, gripping her tablet. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were steady. She knew this was the moment everything had been building toward. Sergeant Halle raised his rifle, ignoring the pain in his side. The other soldiers followed his example. They were tired, injured, and worn down, but they still stood their ground. They no longer mocked Lena, they no longer doubted her. In their eyes, she was the one keeping them alive. The Vrax leader lifted his weapon slowly, pointing it toward Lena. His voice echoed through the corridor in a deep, cold tone. "Human strategists, surrender, you will come with us." Lena felt her heart pounding, but she did not step back. "No," she said quietly. The Vrax leader tilted his head slightly, surprised by the calm in her voice. "Then we take you." Before he could fire, Halle stepped in front of her completely. "You'll have to go through us first?" The Vrax leader gave a signal, and the elite squad advanced. Their movements were faster and more precise than the regular Vrax soldiers. They fired in tight patterns, forcing the humans to dive for cover. Lena pulled Halle down behind a fallen metal crate, just as a plasma bolt tore through the air where his head had been. The heat from the shot washed over them. "They are stronger than before," Halle said, breathing heavily. Lena nodded and checked her tablet again. The station systems were almost gone. Power grids were dying. Doors were stuck. Security was overloaded. She could not depend on digital traps anymore, but she saw something on the map. A narrow maintenance corridor behind them. Small, tight, and easy to miss. It connected two hallways and ran right past the chamber where the elite team was standing. She touched Hale's arm. "We can trap them." "How?" he asked. "We make them chase us." Several soldiers looked confused, but Halle understood instantly. "Everyone fall back. Move with Lena." The humans retreated quickly through the corridor behind them. The Vrax elite advanced, confident and relentless. They believed the humans were running away in fear. Lena led the unit into the maintenance corridor. The air inside was thick with dust and the lights flickered weakly. The narrow walls forced them to move single file. When they reached the end, Lena stopped and turned to Halle. "Seal it." Halle used his rifle to shoot the control panel. Sparks flew, and the maintenance door slammed shut behind them. Just as the Vrax reached it, the aliens immediately began trying to force it open. The metal groaned under their strength. Lena checked her tablet quickly. She had only one thing left she could control, the pressure system connected to the old coolant pipes. She rerouted everything she could into that single corridor. The system was unstable. It could explode. It could collapse the hallway. It was dangerous. But if she hesitated, the Vrax would break through. She pressed the final command. The ground shook violently. A massive roar filled the air as coolant pipes burst behind the maintenance door. Cold vapor shot out, filling the corridor with freezing pressure. The Vrax elite howled in surprise and pain as the force slammed them back. Their armor began to ice over. The narrow corridor trapped the explosion, forcing all energy forward. A final blast sent the door flying outward. Metal fragments scattered everywhere. When the smoke cleared, the Vrax elite lay motionless on the ground. The humans stared at the destruction in silence. Then slowly, relief washed over them. Halle exhaled deeply. "You did it." Lena did not smile. She checked her tablet again. "The Vrax are retreating. Their commander is pulling the remaining forces back to their ships." The soldiers began murmuring among themselves. Some sat down, exhausted. Others rested their rifles on their knees. The battle had drained every bit of strength from them. But Lena stood still, scanning the map until she was completely sure the Vrax ships were indeed leaving. Their attack was over. A sudden static sound came from the speaker above them. A distorted voice spoke in the Vrax language before switching to human translation. Human strategist, Lena Varik. Lena froze. The Vrax commander himself was speaking. We feared the one who sees beyond logic. And now we know your face. Our war calculations will change. We will not underestimate humans again. You have earned our respect. And our caution? The transmission ended. The hallway fell completely silent. The soldiers looked at Lena with wide eyes. The enemy had learned her name, and the galaxy had heard it. Halle rested his hand on her shoulder. You scared them. That's something not many humans can say. Lena looked down at her tablet. She didn't feel victorious. She felt the weight of what was coming. She knew the Vrax would return. Someday, stronger, smarter, prepared for her, but she also knew she had changed something today. Not just for her unit, but for every human in the galaxy. After they secured the area, rescue teams arrived, carrying medical supplies and fresh soldiers to help stabilize the station. Commanding officers, stunned by the reports, requested to meet Lena immediately. She walked through the damaged corridors slowly. Soldiers stopped to look at her. Some nodded. Some whispered her name with respect. Others simply stared. She reached the central hall where the survivors had gathered. The air was warm with relief and exhaustion. Everyone turned as she entered. This time no one mocked her. No one doubted her. She had become the strategist who saved Helios, later. As she stood at the large observation window overlooking space, Halle walked up beside her. You know, he said softly, the High Command wants to assign you to a special division. Strategy Council, Frontline Analysis. They think you can change the war. Lena stared at the stars. I don't want to be famous. I just want to protect people. Halle smiled a little. And that's why they need you. Outside, the stars shimmered against the darkness. The Vrax fleet was gone, but their memory lingered like a shadow across the sky. Lena took a deep breath. If they come again, I'll be ready, and we'll be right behind you. Halle replied. A soft silence settled between them as they watched the distant movement of patrol ships. Lena knew the galaxy had changed tonight. Her name was no longer a joke whispered in training halls. It was a warning carried through enemy channels. Everyone once mocked her, but now, across the stars, her name was spoken with fear and respect. Lena Varek, the human strategist who turned the tide, and this was only the beginning of her story.